I tell people that Miyazaki's Grave of the Fireflies, and by the way, the fireflies in the title referred to the incendiary bombs coming out of B-29 bombers, was his story of what was going on within Japan during World War II, and is easily a 5 Henke movie on a scale of 1 to 5. So, but that's one of his earliest ones, and it was one that he did very, very seriously because he wanted to, people were starting to rewrite history and glorify war, and he wanted to say, this is what happened, this is what I saw, let's cut out the nonsense. And why can't we do episodic shows here in the United States? Well, we can. We have. Disney actually did one of the greatest animated series of all time, critically acclaimed, which was Gargoyles, which had various continuing and overlapping stories. The characters developed, the relationships changed and developed with all the characters, and so it became even more of a dynamic up, down, depth, shallowness, anything you want to say, than any of the soap operas you see on the afternoon, because the emotions and the challenges actually did change very dynamically. Besides Gargoyles, we had Pirates of Dark Water, we had Reboot, which was, if I could get that, if they had that out on DVD, I'd be selling it in my store without in a heartbeat, because I love that series. And I liked how it changed, and I liked the warmth and the relationships with the characters, and that's what made it such a hit for so long. But with all the other shows that are not out on DVD, that one deserves to be rescued. Hit. There are 2 other shows that also had a very strong episodic character development to their nature. Those were Fraggle Rock and it was a space show about from the space station, and you had the spider people coming in. Trying to think of it right now, but in that one, in both of those, the writer of the series had a beginning and then they had an end. Jim Henson said that from the very beginning it was Fraggle Rock was a show about world peace, which made the producer's jaw drop, saying, wait a minute, you want a show about world peace and have it for children? Well, it showed he had a vision. They trusted him for all his work that he's done elsewhere. He had some goodwill built up through all his Sesame Street and his Muppet shows. So that's what he wanted to do, and it turned out to be a little bit more serious. But yet, if you look, in Fraggle Rock, everybody's the Gorgs, the Fraggles, the humans. They're all out unto themselves, and each one discovers the other, and after a while discovers that they are interrelated with each other. And by the end, they are interdependent on each other. Therefore, so is the whole world at this point interdependent. And to have that as a children's show with a not hitting you over the head message, but something that says, you know, there might be something to this, or if you disagree with it, here's where I disagree. But that's something for a person to watch, store, and then consider a little bit later. And again, even Pokemon, I would like to go back and, well, when I'm talking about Fraggle Rock and something meant for the younger children, when I think of Pokemon, I look, yes, it's meant for the very younger children. I think of it as anime on training wheels. But because Ash and his friends are actually interacting with each other, they're going into new places, meeting new people, developing new relationships. They also meeting new adversaries. They're meeting people who they're competing against. They're some people who do not have their best interests in mind. and yet they're thinking the way things through, and when Ash says something stupid, Misty smacks him upside the head, and just like any older sister would do to a younger brother. And this is what I think makes it interesting, because on the younger level, it's something that people that age can identify with. And that is something that with anime, one of the things, and I want to make this another little statement that I heard way back in one of my early psychology courses, and it like lit up a light bulb, boom. And the phrase was, play is a preparation for adulthood. When a younger child is first grade, kindergarten, that sort of thing, their speech communication skills are getting a little bit more active. They're forced to interact with other kids. When they're able to see how people react in a positive way, when they start asking an intelligent question, when they actually have somebody who gives an intelligent and respectful answer to the younger child in the Pokemon series, when they're talking to each other and the younger child sees this. That's something that they can internalize. That's something that they can develop. And that's where, and I'll talk about a little bit more of this a little bit later, because it develops on the teen years. But when somebody 4, 5, 6, 7 sees something that's going on, let's say the types of relationships or something else at 9, 10, or 11, they want to see what's going to happen later on and how to prepare themselves for it. This is a basic need of how to do things. And if they can see something being done and things being said without somebody being the bully, without somebody taking something and disregarding what they have to say, I tell the parents that if a child has a positive statement and they start talking like they do in Pokemon with an intelligent question, that's an opportunity to be gained. That's an opportunity to take things to the next level, to help the child go to that next level. And that's whatever it is, teenager or otherwise. But I think that's one of the things that seems to be missed these days in children's programming due to just marketing and you know, saying, oh, we can't have like Cardcaptor Sakura, which was changed to Card Captors and rearranged so that the first 4 episodes were one episode, because what I heard was that somebody said, oh, we can't have a show with a female lead, we have to introduce the guy in the first episode. So they rearranged things and made him one of the main focuses from the very beginning, because they couldn't really introduce a female character who's intelligent, sophisticated. Oh, and if you can't make a male action figure, I guess that makes 3 strikes, and that's why you can't have it. A little sarcasm there, but it's still, I think, something that we need to learn. In fact, on that, as an anecdote, I saw this on a documentary, that in the first Toy Story movie, they had a huge debate on whether or not to have around 10, 12 seconds of silence on a very introspective scene. They said, oh, kids won't do that, they can't do that, we have to have it bouncy, we have to have this, that. And this was off a A&E, I think, biography for the film company. But the fact that they kept it in there, and it worked. And if you look at that, how if people are going to argue just over 10, 15 seconds, what about all the other things that can be taken seriously? You know, but those we'll talk about that a little bit later too, I think. Every generation has its pop culture. We had, even before the age of films, you had huge amounts of short stories, and a lot of these short stories were taken up by some of the early film and Disney producers. Where I'm talking about Johnny Appleseed, you had you had all the Greek stories from the Greek heroes. You had, well, every country with their pantheon of gods that they may have had become little moralistic tales or morality plays. And so we have to kind of build on that. And when film comes along, they started to take a lot of these stories. Then they said, you know what? We have the science stuff, we have these other stories. So all of a sudden, sci-fi was born, and you had the first couple of films like the First Man on the Moon. You had oh shoot, I was trying to think of the name of the film, but it was the one about the robotic female that they invented and then found out. Then they left the human part out of a mechanical robot, and so all of a sudden you had the first lesson of humanity versus being human. Now, to scoot up about 50 years, you had shows, some of which were Star Trek. You had some others that said, what happens when humanity, especially Star Trek Next Generation with Data, what's more important, being human or humanity? If a human being acts like a monster and does many monstrous things, that is not a good thing. But what happens if you have a robot, Data, who actually has more sympathy and human heart than some of the humans around them? So I think sometimes that is missed. But that is, in a lot of these more recent action shows, I think that's a part of the storyline that seems to be lacking these days. I want to go into, as long as I'm talking about film as a morality play, I just wanted to mention another anime which I really like. It was called Weathering Continent. And the music, the setting, the pacing seems to be very close to the Conan the Barbarian movies, but you take Conan and those little comic book cartooniness and you throw them in the garbage can, replace them with two groups of adventurers in a desert going through a city of the dead, and as they do so, one good, one bandit, each gets what they deserve. At the same time, it shows insights about one of the travelers and the body of the person who died outside the city of the dead. And that becomes almost a three-dimensional aspect to the film. But again, that's one of them that I really recommend.